From meeting room wisdom to bestseller lists, changemakers to chapter ones, this is where expertise meets legacy. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Everybody, welcome to the Authors on Mission podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. And this podcast is where we explore the strategies and insights of leading experts who are transforming their fields through the power of writing. Today, we're diving into a topic that's revolutionizing how we think about careers and retirement. Our guest is Dr. Michelle Prince, a global leadership coach and human capital consultant with over 30 years of experience transforming organizations and leaders. Her best-selling book, Creating Your Encore Career, is challenging traditional notions of retirement and helping professionals find purpose and prosperity in their third act. Dr. Prince brings unique insights from her work with major corporations like Salesforce, Disney, Microsoft, and from her own experiences with HR and entrepreneurship. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, Dr. Prince.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, it's always an honor, and I'm very excited to learn more about you and your writing process and how having a book out there on the shelves really helped to transform your career in any way. So before we get started, can you let our audience know a little bit about yourself and your journey and what made you decide to write a book?
Sure. Starting from self, I was a working mom for many, many years, over 30 years, still working. But my kids are older now, as I advanced in my career, I was thinking about what I wanted to do after the kids leave for college or after they're out on their own. And it was really the opportunity to step back and say, do I want to keep doing what I'm doing? Or would I like to maybe take a transition in my career? Do I want to do something very different, slightly different? So having the opportunity to do that, because there was a variety of reasons. I was coming off of an international assignment, and there was not an equitable job for me. So I was going to have to look for a new job. So it was timing. Do I want to look for a new job now in my mid to late 50s, or do I want to start my own business? Do I want to do something different? So the interesting alignment to people I work with and also Creating Your Encore Career book is I'm not alone in this journey of late 50s to mid to late 60s, people either getting laid off or taking the opportunity to reevaluate. If they still want to work a little bit longer, what do they want to do? And that, frankly, Danielle, is how the book came about. I do an incredible amount of work with executives and professionals in outplacement. And many of them have the same question, mainly because the thought of job searching when you're in your mid to late 50s or older, frankly, is quite daunting to either start over if you've been at the same company for a long time, or over the past 5 years, if you've by no fault of your own, had to move company to company to company, and you just don't want to have to do that anymore. So it's Creating Your Encore Career is really about empowering you to take charge of your own career. And it all stemmed a little bit from my own experience, but I had already been thinking about what I was going to do if and when I left corporate. So I had a little bit of a primer for really about 10 years. Thinking about it, and writing the book was really just a way of providing the same kind of coaching I do as a career coach or outplacement coach, but making it 100% accessible to anyone who wants it. And that was, frankly, the drive behind writing the book. After helping so many clients ease into their encore career or make that career transition and pivot, they talked to me about how helpful it was to have the coaching. Could they have done it on their own? Maybe. Would they have? Maybe not. But having the coaching and the support and some of the tools and resources, allowed them and enabled them and empowered them to do it. They asked if they could share my tools with friends, and I said, of course, absolutely. And all of them said, you should write a book. So it's really on their advice that's how I came to be an author. You mentioned in my intro 30 years of HR experience. Yeah. So for years and years, I was working with professionals to help them advance their careers within organizations. And now I'm really doing it on my own as an independent freelancer, solopreneur. So that's what I love to do.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your whole story with us. I think that's, it's important for us to understand where you come from and, the journey that led you to start typing words in a document to write your book, right? Because it's important to know, what led to those insights that are so valuable that you're sharing with everybody. And, in your case, and to all of our listeners out there right now, one reason why we love to write a book is in order to share what we know with others. You find a need that somebody sees that needs to be filled, and here you are, you're filling that need by giving them information, helping them to succeed in areas. My question to you then is, can you perhaps share one of these success stories with us from one of the clients that you've helped through your consulting or through the book? Maybe perhaps some, positive feedback from that. I'm sure you've helped so many people.
I have. And, ironically, you just said something that really resonated with me, which is why we write a book. There's a need for us to share our knowledge and information. There's value to that. But if there's a gap in information already out there, or if it's available, and for example, there's articles on Encore Career or, semi-retirement, there are people that speak about it. But when I was doing my research prior to writing the book, Danielle, what I found was the closest thing to the step-by-step guide was about 12 years old. And you can imagine how much the world has changed in 12 years, right? And so a lot of the commentary, even on the most recent comments on the book that I could find, was interesting information, but a little dated. So I was trying to find books and resources to share with my clients, and I wasn't finding what I wanted. I wasn't finding the type of articles and support that I wanted my clients to have. And that was another reason, that was really a driver behind writing my own book. I actually never read the other book that was 12 years old. I just read the content.
It wouldn't have what you need in there, being that it's so dated.
It's so dated. And a lot of it said, it's not relevant for the gig economy. It's not relevant for technology. And it's so true, because really only within the last 5 years has there been an acceleration of freelancers, platforms, flex work, remote work. So it's really prime time for people to think about their Encore career. And you asked me to share a story with you. So yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I have a number of them. The one that is most fresh, because I recently revisited with this client, she was in sales. She was an outstanding sales designer. And previously to that, an interior designer. So she was a sales representative for a certain brand of interior design. Top in her sales competitions, really driven by helping people transition or transform their homes and their lives and the way that they lived. And that was her passion for the work she was doing. And then all of a sudden she got laid off because the company did a restructuring, and she had the opportunity to step back and say, okay, I have been doing this for so many years, and while it's financially very fulfilling, I would love to explore what else I could be doing. And so we started to go through the process of creating your Encore career, which starts with self-assessment and self-reflection. So what are your passions? What are you interested in? Because an Encore career is not driven by financial incentive the way a full-time primary career often is. It really is about your passion, your value, a purpose, however you want to define it. But what would you rather be doing, right? What would bring you joy? And we started to talk about her passion for health and well-being. She herself is an avid workout person, eat healthy person. She had done her own research. She often was asked by others about how she managed to stay looking so young and energetic, etc., etc. And so this passion of hers transitioned into, boy, wouldn't it be amazing if I could actually help others also enhance their well-being? And I said, well, you've been designing with people their homes. Now you're going to help them design healthy habits for well-being. And she's like, oh my God, I love that. But the next step is, okay, if that's what you want to do, how do you get there? What's the roadmap? What steps do you have to take? And part of her journey, as an example, was getting a certification in coaching so that she could have the credibility she felt she needed. She had the passion, but she wanted that credential. So she completed a coaching certification, and she is now a professional health and well-being habits coach. And that's what she's doing, and she's really enjoying it. There's nothing to stop you from figuring out what your Encore career is other than your own self-limiting beliefs, fear of failure, lack of supportive people around you, and potentially some imposter syndrome, which I had myself. So having a coach or having this guide on the side, this kind of like step-by-step finding your third act, is really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, first off, it's always very powerful to hear these stories, to hear that you've impacted somebody and you've helped them and, you improve them in some way or another. And, in this specific instance, like, you're able to take what they were doing and you found a way to make it work so that they could have that third act, like meshing it together in a way that worked for them, which I think is incredible. But, drawing off what you said at the very end there, I mean, it sounds like there are some misconceptions when it comes to these Encore careers. You mentioned like imposter syndrome and some self-doubt. I know that your book addresses this a little bit, but to everybody listening right now, they might be thinking like, oh, like, I'm in my own business. I already made it here. Why do I need to think about this? How do you address these kind of misconceptions?
It may be just time for a change. I work with folks who are nurses or teachers or government workers. The reason they're interested in an Encore career is they can actually retire with a pension, in the US at least, at a fairly early age. 55, 56, 57, 58, just depends on what their career choice was for their primary career. Most others have nothing like that. Large corporations don't have pensions anymore. You have a 401k that's totally yours and portable. Or you might be thinking, well, I'm going to get Social Security, but maybe not until I'm 67, 68. So everybody's journey, Danielle, is unique. It depends on where you are from a career perspective, where you are healthy, vitality-wise, because there's a lot of talk in the early part of the book about longevity. We are living longer. So you used to retire in your 60s and then you died in your 70s. Well, people are living longer. They're living well into their 80s. Some might argue that your generation will live till 100. So it's a totally redefinition of what do I want to do career-wise. And when this one client I had, she's like, 60 is the new 40. I'm financially stable. I am young. I have virtually no obligations. I'm smarter than I was even back then. I still have a lot to offer. I have a lot of impact I can make. What do I want to do? And I don't figure it out for them. I guide them, and so does the book. We guide them on how to identify it for themselves. But we are there to make suggestions. Now, the book doesn't make suggestions because it's impossible for that. But it gives tools and resources on how to figure that out. And then for anybody who still wants some additional coaching on it, they can call me. We can talk coaching at that point. But Ageism is a real issue. Pace of change in organizations is a real issue, where there's an awful bias or assumption that old people can't learn new things, right? Older workers don't want to work as hard. Sometimes that's true. Some people are not as adept at technology, but there are a lot of people who are. And so that whole fear of ageism or fear of failure that holds people back from maybe taking a pivot or a career transition may or may not be true. It could be a story they're telling themselves. It could be a story somebody else told them that they now believe. So it's really kind of getting a little deeper at what are the fears and whether or not you're interested to take a risk and give something else a try.
Yeah, well, I mean, thanks for addressing all that. I think that's really beneficial for our listeners to hear right now, especially in a day and age where it's like, so many things are changing. Do we want to do something different? Do we want to continue with this? But, you said it perfectly, right? And I know that your book offers very actionable steps to take with that. Speaking of the book, though, all this data that you had to collect, for example, the idea that, our lifespans are getting are extending. So we have to think about these different career changes. It took a lot of research. So I'm assuming this was a huge part of the writing process. And I guess I'm using this to transition into, what was your writing process like? You wrote this book on your own, what did you do? How did you get into the flow, the research, the outlines? Give us a little bit of a rundown. We're all very curious to know what tips to offer for writing a book of this type.
Yeah. So, it was probably 15 years in the making. A lot of authors I talk to have a book in their head for a really long time until they write it down. I had the notion of longevity ever since, and this is in the preface of the book, but ever since I heard Jane Fonda talk at a TEDx Women event, I think it was 2011, and she said people are living longer and she looked out in the audience and she said, she was addressing me, I was in my 40s, she said, if you're going to live till 90 or 100, how are you going to live? What impact are you going to make? And she really challenged the notion of the traditional retirement. And she herself is in her 90s and still actively working and making movies and TV shows. So yeah, she's a real inspiration. About 10 years later, I was at the London Business School and I was running leadership programs and was introduced to a woman named Linda Gratton, who was a faculty member in our leadership program. And she and a gentleman named Andrew Scott wrote The 100-Year Life. And as I was listening to her and as I read the book, I'm thinking, well, this is something that's probably been resonating in my mind now for quite some time because it's really starting to take shape. And if people are going to live longer, how can we, I was an HR professional at the time, right? How can we embrace that and make sure that we're either engaging, retaining that whole multi-generational workforce? So it kind of was all coming together. The research I did was really about filling that gap. As I mentioned, I really wasn't finding the content I was looking for from my clients. The thought and notion of people living longer, but a lot of my clients didn't want to keep doing what they were doing. Just as I said, they were teachers or they were nurses or they were in the same type of work, within a government organization, didn't want to keep doing that. But if you stop what you're doing as a primary profession, what are you? Well, so many people define themselves by their career. So if you're no longer a teacher, you could say, I'm just a retired teacher. But just a retired teacher who still has a good 10 years or maybe even 15 more years where they could continue to add value. So what do they want to do? Some teachers become tutors. Some teachers become proctors. So there are some things that you can do that are in tangent or aligned with the type of profession that you had. Or one of my teacher clients always had jewelry making as a hobby. And it was a passion of hers. She did it in her basement, and she made things for herself and for her friends and for gifts, until one day she realized, I can do this as my Encore career. Do I want to? Okay, what do I need if I'm going to do that? Do you need a website? Do you need inventory? Do you need a marketing strategy? We talked about technology and how much it has changed in the last 5 years. Well, you can pretty much sell anything you want globally to anyone, anywhere. Via Etsy or Shopify. There's these platforms that enable that. So all of a sudden there are fewer barriers to entry, right? The biggest and strongest barrier is fear of failure and self-limiting beliefs. So kind of getting back to, this third act and this feeling of your first act, if you will, is education, right? Your second act is your primary career. And then it used to be retirement was your third act. That's whatever you were going to spend the rest of your life doing. But Linda Groton and Andrew Scott in their 100-Year Life actually defined the third act as something you're going to do that's different than your primary career, and it's not driven financially. It's driven by passion. And actually, they talk about you could have multiple changes in your career throughout your life, which is probably true for the current generations and next generations coming up. That whole cradle to grave notion that you would stay in the same type of work or the same company for years and years and years is just, it's no longer the norm.
Yeah, I mean, that's one reason why you need to always be on top of things, adapting and being ready to make that change, and just being aware of whatever is trending and out there in the world. And, I like, for example, the person who is making the jewelry, she has ways now to do that because, we're engaged with the world and we know what's up to date and new and exciting. I'm wondering if perhaps maybe that's one of your suggestions for somebody who's thinking, okay, like, how can I still, have financial security while pursuing my passions, even after my career? I mean, of course, not everybody can make a profit from jewelry making. So, I mean, what advice do you have for people who, are passionate about something that might not always hit the mark?
That's true. Well, which is why we say that your Encore career is passion driven versus financially driven. And in the book, in chapter 6, I do spend a little bit of time talking about finances. No matter where you live in the world, it's very important to understand what you need in order to be comfortable in your later years. But what is enough is different for everybody. So, you have to know what you have, you have to know what you need, and you have to define what is enough so that you take the financial issue either off the table or it's part of your decision on how you create your Encore career. Because, at least in the U.S., there's at least 30% of women who have been surveyed who feel like they are in a risk of retirement insecurity. And that's because in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, they were not saving for retirement. They were paying bills. They were either taking care of family, paying for colleges. Some people just live paycheck to paycheck and didn't have a chance to save. And so it's not until maybe their early 50s where they think, oh, I better start saving. So it could very well be that they are at risk for retirement insecurity. They may have to work in a full-time job till they're full retirement eligible. That is very possible and very real for a lot of people. Other parts of the world, there's government or provided medical care. Not necessarily in this country, in the U.S. I don't know if your listeners are, different parts of the world, but most of the governments have some kind of retirement eligibility and very different levels of what's covered for medical. And those are important to think about as you age and who's going to be taking care of you, or if you are going to need care, how are you going to make sure that you have enough? The other is how much do you need to earn in creating your Encore career? So some people want to keep working. There's over, I believe the last number I looked at, 10 million U.S. workers who are 65 or older. So, they are either still working full-time or have pivoted to an Encore career of some kind. We don't know, and I don't know why they're working, if they have to financially, which could be very real, or if they want to. There's also a phenomenon for multi-generational caregiving. And this kind of goes away from the book, but it plays into my coaching, which is, what is your why? Because there are over 3 million people who are grandparents who are taking care of grandchildren because their adult children are not able to for whatever reason. So that's an obligation they hadn't planned for when they were thinking about what their retirement might look like. And all of a sudden now they have more financial obligation than they had before. So they have to work. There's also the notion of, if I am going to work, how much can I earn without reducing, like in the U.S., my Social Security? So people have to know that if they keep working well into their retirement age and start taking Social Security at the same time, that may or may not be beneficial because of the way the government taxes income once you start taking Social Security. Not everybody knows this, but the most important thing is to find that out. And that's really, chapter 6 it's just one chapter, but it's a really important chapter to consider.
Yeah, definitely. These are all aspects that I probably wouldn't have thought of myself. Encore careers don't always have to be somebody who wants to, something to do in their free time. It's something like, you have responsibilities you need to account for, changes in life. So this goes back to being adaptive of changing times too, right? Like, you have to be adaptive of how your own life is also changing in addition to the world around you, and knowing how to address that when the time comes. So I get that.
True. It's true. And some people want to do volunteer work too. So it might not even be paid, but it's professional impact. It's taking what you know how to do. Maybe it's mentoring. Maybe it's being an advisor for a university. Maybe it's being an advisor on a board. It really just depends on what you did in your primary career, how you can translate what you loved about it into something that is more driven by passion. I know I have this one client who's a full-time teacher who will be retiring in the next 5 years, and she's already started a nonprofit. And it's a passion of hers, and this nonprofit will, even after she retires, she will continue to run this nonprofit. So you also don't have to already be retired to think about your Encore career. You can start thinking about it, planning for it, even taking action on it. And that's one of the chapters that I talk about in the book too, which is the importance of your network and creating a network before you need them. But the network is going to help you also be successful in your Encore career, and aligning resources and staying up with the trends and being associated and affiliated with people who are in either the industry you want to stay in and continue to work in, or the type of nonprofit that you would like to be a part of, or joining someone else's nonprofit if you don't want to take on the responsibility of running your own. It's just really about, some people want to be more in a mission-driven company. So another one of my clients, he was a military personnel, retired with full pension from the military. So theoretically, he didn't even have to work, but he was way too young to not work, had so much to offer. So he started to do, as part of his Encore career, he started to do some teaching at a local college. And also, he took a full-time role, but in a company that was much, much more mission-driven than the type of company he was in before and he was unhappy with. So it was just a better fit for him. But still, he works full time, and now, still working even more than full time because he's doing teaching as well as his full time job. Yet the jobs give him energy and excitement and enthusiasm and meaningfulness versus his primary career after the military. The jobs he had didn't provide him that level of fulfillment.
Yeah. All of these are incredibly insightful things. I think anybody listening right now should take to heart. Perhaps this is some homework we should send everybody home with today. If that's where you are, think about what's going to be happening next, and pick up Dr. Francis's book and check out chapter 6 particularly, and find out all this information that you might not know. It's important to be prepared, especially nowadays. You never know with the world, the way things are changing. You have to be prepared.
It's true. And Danielle, to that point, I know we have a very diverse listener audience. Frankly, everything that's in the book guides you through a career transition, a career pivot of any kind. So regardless of what age or stage you are in your career, if you would like to think about making a career pivot and a career transition into something different, the book will guide you step by step on how to do that, chapter by chapter, whether you want to start your own business, whether you want to volunteer, whether you feel like you need to go back and get some credentials or add to the level of credibility that you already have. It really does give you that kind of step-by-step framework to follow. I chose to focus it on Encore Career only because there are millions and millions of people in the situation of not wanting a full-time career after their primary career, and virtually not enough help out there for them. So that's why I wrote it.
Yeah, and not only that, but now that you have your book out there, it also leads people to your practice as well. It kind of goes hand in hand. So, to anybody out there who's listening, how can they find you? If they want to find out more information, if maybe perhaps you could share some of your links. We're going to put them in the chat as well. But what are some of the best options to finding you and reaching out?
Well, right now, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. That is where I post interesting things, whether you're in HR or whether you are a leader or whether you're looking to create your Encore career. Those are my 3 sweet spot target areas. Prince Consulting is a portfolio of leadership effectiveness consulting, career coaching, HR consulting, and I also do some HR advisory work. Those are, my chosen Encore career paths. And so I live on LinkedIn. The book itself, it looks like this. It's on Amazon. It's the only place you could buy it. You can get it as an ebook, a paperback, or a hardcover. And all my information is available on LinkedIn or Prince Consulting or Michelle Prince. And I would love if people want to reach out. I'd be happy to do even just a 30-minute free consultation just to see where you are and if you would benefit from any support.
Well, I love that, and here's everybody some free consultations too to figure out where you are and what where to move forward, which is great. So we're gonna put all those links into the description, so you can go ahead and click it right now, or maybe after the podcast, check it out. And speaking of which, you said it was on Amazon and it's on all these different platforms. I know that you wrote the book yourself, you did the research, but there were some people there who helped you along the way, and I think Authors on a Mission helped you get it out there. Can you share a little bit about how our team helped you bring it out into the world, and how was the process? What was it like for you?
Yeah, I will say from the very first conversation I had with the strategy consultant. She was very open to listening to my thoughts. At that time, I was very timid and wondering whether or not I should even write a book, even though people had said, oh, you should write a book and, you're very knowledgeable. But yeah, there's some imposter syndrome there about, who would want to read my book. And so I was able to figure out the next steps in the journey, thanks to her. And then there's a group of people. That's the other really nice thing about Authors on Mission is there's a whole group of people. It's not one person that you rely on for everything. There are subject matter experts. So there's, I was assigned an editor, a partner, really, and his name is Vincent Lancy. Hey, Vincent. Awesome. Just so awesome. Very encouraging. He himself is a writer, so he understood what I was going through. Really helped me to stay on track. I was personally very disciplined. Also, I had kind of committed to myself that like every 4 to 6 weeks, I'd send him a couple chapters and say, okay, here's a couple more, and here's a couple more. I didn't want to write the entire book and then have someone read it and give me back all this feedback. I really wanted iterative support, and he was willing to do that. I know he doesn't do that with everybody. It just depends on what your writing style is. But because of his flexibility and the encouragement of the rest of the team, I didn't feel like I was on my own. I didn't feel like I was doing this alone. I always felt supported. If I had a question, somebody could answer it. There's an online forum that, Authors on Mission has, and there's some training that is provided as part of the service. So that was fantastic. My whole experience, and I've told everybody this who says to me, how was your process writing a book? I would not have had, I don't think, as positive an experience except for the team at Authors on Mission. And even down to the logistics of getting it listed on Amazon and helping with all that, I wouldn't have known the first thing about how to do that. I spoke to a friend of mine who wrote his own book. He had to go out and find an editor. He had to go out and find someone to create the cover. And he had to go out and find someone to format it for different formats. And he had to go out and find someone to help him copyright it, etc., right? So I knew if I had to do all that myself, it was never going to get done. I just didn't have the energy or enthusiasm to be able to do all that. So after I heard his story, I started looking around for organizations that could partner with me and provide that kind of support. And that's exactly what Authors on Mission was for me. And in addition to that, helping me market the book as well and giving me lots of ideas on how I can continue not just to market the book, but as you said, tie it back to the coaching that I do, because ultimately, I am here to coach. If people find the book is enough, great. If they would like some more help, that's where the coaching comes in. So I have nothing but positive 5-star reviews for my personal experience with Authors on Mission.
Well, you're too sweet. It's really nice to hear all that, to know that our team was able to help you in such positive way, because at the end of the day, everybody, you can spend hours and years writing your book, but at the end of the day, you need to make sure it actually gets on to print and gets into the hands of the people who want to read it. So that's what our team does, and thank you for pointing that out. We have a team, like I myself, I do many roles. I'm an angel writer, I'm a ghost writer, I work with the content creation, but everybody else is very specialized in what they do, so they know exactly how to help, and our services are customizable. So for you, Michelle, it was great that you were able to just send chapters to your editor and they gave you feedback, whereas other people might have a complete manuscript they want edited. Sometimes people need whole developmental edits, sometimes you only need some line edits. Maybe you just want marketing. Your book's all ready to go, it's already published, you just need marketing. So it's very hands-on, do it, whatever you need, like a buffet table, and we're always here to help. I guess by definition you could say we're on a mission to just help You get whatever you need to go. It's a little corny. It's actually, believe it or not, that's the first time I've used that line.
Really? Oh, it's
But
perfect.
it's true. I mean, we were trying to get you to where you need to be. So thank you for that. And my next question to you as we start to wrap up today's episode, Michelle, do you have any last bits of advice that perhaps anybody listening today who's looking to start writing their own book or starting that third act themselves, any last pieces of nuggets of advice to leave them with?
Yeah, I would say two things. One, don't let fear hold you back. Give it a go. As long as you're not doing brain surgery or rocket science, no one's going to be hurt by if it works, if it doesn't. But surround yourself with supportive people, and including Authors on Mission, the kind of people that know what they're doing, but also can provide you with the support, not just the expertise, but there's a lot of emotion that goes into writing a book. There's a lot of energy that stamina. You got to stay with it. Frankly, Authors on Mission was easier for me to write Creating Your Encore Career with Authors on Mission than it was to do my doctorate dissertation with my chair committee. So if that says anything, I did it faster. I did it the way I felt like it needed to be done. I got great feedback from the team at Authors on Mission, and it really, really was an enjoyable experience. It shouldn't be painful. And if you're out there and you're trying to write your book and you're finding it to be painful, then try surrounding yourself with folks like Authors on Mission. Their goal is to help you succeed in publishing your book, and they will do everything they can to help you get there.
Awesome. I mean, amazing pieces of advice, and thank you so much for the kind words again. Our team's really out there to help everybody, and to everyone listening as well. If you need this advice, you need to check out Michelle's book. You need to find everything you need, because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. You need to hold these things. So go ahead, check out the links in the description box. And, again, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Prince. It was such a pleasure to hear your insights and your experience. And, I know there's a wealth of knowledge in the book as well. We've only touched the tip of the iceberg. So be sure to check it out, everybody. And, without further ado, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Dr. Prince's insights on creating meaningful Encore careers couldn't be more timely as we navigate these challenging work landscapes and longer lifespans like we've talked about today. So creating an Encore career offers a roadmap for anybody who's looking to transform their professional journey. Everyone listening today, remember, whether you're considering a career transition or planning for the future, or don't think you're even doing anything, you need to get a wake-up call. It's never too early to start thinking about these things. So you can find Dr. Prince's book on Amazon, like we just talked about. Connect with her through her links. And until next time, keep writing, keep leading, and keep inspiring. And Dr. Prince, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. And to everybody else, have a great day and check out our other episodes. Thanks for listening.
As we close another inspiring episode, remember, every best-selling author was once just a person with a story to tell. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, inviting you to write the next chapter of your success story at authorsonmission.com. Your audience is waiting, your wisdom is ready, and your book is next.